These are the crib boards, and they do a wonderful job of keeping the rain out. The trouble is, they're in the way when you're out sailing. You want to get in and out of the cabin now and then. And there is the companionway with the boards out. Great access, but everything down below gets wet. And some of you may have heard about Western Washington and Seattle. It rains here a lot. So I would really like a way to get in and out of the cabin without having to deal with putting the crib boards in and out. Hi, this is Jim's Little Boat. I'm Jim. This is my old Sailrite sewing machine. It's about 20 years old. I picked this up about 6 months ago. I had a couple specific projects in mind. I wanted to deal with that companionway cover, and eventually I want to make a steadying sail so that the boat doesn't wander around when it's on a buoy or an anchor. So what I've been doing for the last 6 months or so is paying my dues, making up these tote bags. And I think I'm finally ready to tackle the project with a cover for the companionway. So let's do it, and I'll probably say it a couple times during the video. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm making this up as I go along. So join me for the journey. Let's see if we can get a cover. Well, as I pointed out in the intro, it rains a lot around here, and I don't go out in the rain on purpose, but I would like a way to cover up the companionway without putting in the crib boards. They're really a pain in the butt. I'm thinking like a piece of canvas that attaches up here to the top of the hatch cover. There's the weatherboard, and then it just kind of flops down and maybe has a weight at the bottom to kind of keep it in place. Then when you need to go in the cabin, you just flip that thing up and you walk in and flip it back down when you come out. So I think what we'll do is get started. I'm going to make a 3-inch wide piece of canvas to go right there. And then I'll figure out how to cut this shape and attach it all together. This will be a rough draft. I cut a piece of sunbrella that was 10 inches wide, and I folded it back 3¼ inches and put a hem in it. So that leaves 2 pieces. This is the doubled up part to give it some strength. I think down here, this will be the part that I fold over and cut scallops to attach it to the front part. I was going to use an elaborate spiling technique to copy the shape of the weatherboard, but it turned out that wasn't necessary. I just held this strip up there and traced it. And now I've captured that shape, and I'm going to cut out some plywood pieces so I can make a form. I think you guys need to keep in mind that I don't actually know how to do this. I'll have to admit this was probably unnecessary, but just because I'm used to doing things that way, I took a pine batten and used it to fair up the curve. Now we can cut that out on the bandsaw. You could use a jigsaw if you don't have a bandsaw. At this point, I've taken the cardboard template and I used it to cut out 2 pieces of plywood and nailed them together with blocks to make kind of a form. Put some double-sided tape on the form, and I'm using that to hold the cloth in place. I used a square and I drew a line every 3 inches, and I left 3/4 inch slack up there at the top. So now I'm going to cut a slit like this in each of those lines to get my scallops. I sewed a placket onto the top piece, and that allowed me to open up the scallops and staple it together and sew it all together, and that will give it some stiffness. Right now I'm in the process of taking the staples out and getting ready to add the front edge. After much dinking around, many trips back to the boat, this is the second template, and I'm pretty satisfied that it fits well enough that I'm just about ready to start laying this project out on expensive canvas. Unfortunately, you can't just take the cardboard template you made for the top and lay it on there to get the seam allowance and the fold line. You have to actually spile it all back with a 1-inch block. Reason being, that is 1 inch greater radius than that, and that is 1 inch less radius. So you just have to kind of work your way along with a 1-inch wide block in my case and draw the line. I've been working away on this little cover project. Generous hem allowance, that's a 1-inch hem. I've got the first row of stitching in. Let me show you the second row of stitching, how that'll look. So the second row of stitching to hold the hem will be the white thread that kind of goes with everything. You can see I'm still learning how to sew a straight thread. Long process, I'm quite the rookie. Looks like that. And I've got this hem turned back. and it'll go in a big loop. So the process continues. Well, as you can see, I got off the line right there, and then the thread shredded. So I'm just going to take and pull all this thread out and start over again on this particular seam. Thank gosh for seam rippers. Not perfect, but substantially better, and for a beginner, I think I can live with that. I just went out and test fitted this thing on the boat, and it fits substantially better than I would have expected for my first effort. There's a couple little improvements I could make. One in particular is the rivets. These were a mistake. I left too much seam out here, but it turned out to be a great mistake because I flipped it back over and riveted down, and now the corner's extra strong. So maybe I'll include that in the template. There's a couple things I do differently next time. I would take this piece, the top that goes over the cabin top, over the hatch top, and I would sew it inside out so the seam was hidden. So I had to settle for this. I'm not too worried about it. The edges are heat sealed, so they won't unravel, but that's certainly one thing I would do differently. I would pay a lot more attention to make sure I had the machine set up the same way. This doesn't look too bad. It looks sort of intentional, but it would have been better if the zigzag length and width was exactly the same everywhere. I was pretty consistent everywhere with the seam length, but the machine, a Sailrite, tends to slip a little bit. So if you look closely from one side to the other, the stitch length is a little different. Now all I need is for my snap kit to get here from Sailrite, and I'll put 4 snaps, maybe 5 along the top, and a couple of snap buttons on each side, and we can give this thing a test. The studs are all mounted, and after I get the whole thing fitted and put together, I'll decide if I want to put some down here on the side. It won't be all the way down, but maybe just a couple. I was wondering how I was going to get these snaps in the right place on the canvas, but it turns out that Sailrite sells this trick little system, and I won't bother to go into it because their video is far better than anything I could show you. Well, I'm back in the shop now, and I have to say this is totally slick. We use these little fasteners on the pins, and now I know exactly where the snaps need to go. This is great. Sailrite has all the parts you'll need to install these fancy snaps. You'll have to supply the hammer. They have a great video. Well, gosh, there it is, along with its matching tote bag. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Now I just hope I never have to use it. And that's what it looks like when it's rolled up out of the way. And that's what it looks like when you just flip it over on the cabin top to get it out of your way. Well, darn, sometimes you get lucky. Considering I only plan to use that cover 2 or 3 times a year, I don't generally sail in the rain. Maybe that's the final draft and I'm all done. You can get lots of great information and the supplies you need to do this project from Sailrite. They have great videos, sailrite.com. I'm Jim. Thanks for watching. See you out on the water.